Hello everyone, my name is Jordan and today we are learning all about the 5 domains of animal welfare. They are an internationally recognised standard of animal health and well-being. But how do these 5 domains apply to my own horses and ponies, and how, as horse owners, can we be incorporating them into the daily management of our beloved horses and ponies? So today I'm going to be talking to Roxane Kirton, a very well-renowned equine behaviourist and vet. She's going to be talking us through all that we need to know. So let's go and get started. So today we're learning all about the 5 domains. So would you mind in starting to explain what these 5 domains are?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 5 domains is a framework for assessing animal welfare. So it's a scientific framework developed in New Zealand. So it can be applied to lots of different species, not just horses.
Okay.
And essentially what we're doing is using the 4 functional domains to then really look at what that lived experiences for the animal. So that's what's exciting about the 5 domains, is it's not just looking at the resources we provide, it's looking at the actual welfare of the animal itself. So how is the animal feeling about the resources that we're providing and the environment that they're living in? And it also focuses not just on looking at identifying and eliminating negative welfare states, which is historically what we've looked at a lot. It also looks at really recognises that to get optimal welfare, we need to look at how we can advance and promote the opportunities for positive interactions and mental states as well. So I think that's one of the most exciting things about the 5 domains, is it provides us this structural framework to make that assessment of what our horses are actually experiencing and looking at how they're feeling about that essentially as well.
Okay, so starting from the top, can you talk us through what all 5 are?
Yes, hopefully I can. So our 4 functional domains are nutrition, the environment that the animal is living in, their physical health, and then their behavioural interactions. So we're really looking at the first 3 domains about what we're providing for the animals, the resources that they have available, and then the 4th behavioural interactions domain is really about how the animal interacts with those. So how they are behaving. So recently that's been kind of broken down to make it a little bit easier to kind of understand into environmental interactions, human-animal interactions, so what's our horse's relationship like with people, and then social interactions or non-human interactions. So, horses are highly social species, so what opportunities do they have and how do they engage with interactions with other horses as well. And then we take our assessment of all of those and we make careful inferences about how that is then making the horse feel. So what's the mental state associated with those 4 domains, and that helps us build an overall picture for the 5th domain of what their mental state is and what it is that they're likely to be feeling from the scoring that we've done on the other domains.
So the 5th one, the mental state, is impacted by the first 4 domains,
yes,
is that correct?
Absolutely,
in saying that. So how can horse owners make sure they're incorporating these 5 domains into their daily management? Where do we start?
So the nice thing about the 5 domains is it looks at all elements of our horse's life. I think historically we've been maybe a bit more focused on physical health as a function of welfare, and sometimes we forget about kind of psychological health and the other things in terms of the horse's life that can impact those things as well. So absolutely horse owners can apply this to all kinds of situations with their horses, so what the kind of routine management is. So when we're applying it, it's really important that we apply it understanding what our horse's species specific needs are, and that's super important because we are evaluating this from the horse's perspective. So not what we think the horse needs, but what the horse actually needs and wants. Yeah, so that's really important. If we evaluate it from our perspective, then we're not going to be taking on board the impact that it's actually having on the horse necessarily. So it allows us a framework to have a look at kind of, what our kind of management practices might be impacting, and really importantly, how we can improve those as well. So it's not just about assessing what we're doing and saying, okay, maybe that's not optimal. Really what we want to be thinking is, how can we improve that? How can we make more positive experiences for our horses? You know, and it's not, we can't always manage our horses in completely ideal situations. You know, maybe they've got some health issues that mean that they can't be out all of the time, or they need to be on a diet because they're overweight, for example. So we can have a look at those kind of practices, really critically evaluate where the deficits in them might be and how we can then make them better as well for our horses. So I think it's a really useful tool. We can also look at like training practices, competitions, veterinary interventions. So it allows us to look at a whole host of different things that we might be exposing our horses to through a really critical lens about how that's impacting them.
I see, and I suppose it's much easier to see the physical things, you know, to do with the horse than it is to maybe think about the mental state, you know, because it's maybe something that's not, you would not instantly think of as how happy is my horse? You know, you maybe think, oh, well, of course I need to make sure his diet's okay and, you know, that he's happy and he's comfortable in his stable or in his social group, but you would maybe not think about the impact that would have on his mental health.
Definitely, and I think we're all still perhaps a little bit scared about talking about emotions in animals, and we do have to be a little bit careful because it's easy to assign human characteristics to animals that they just don't have. But I think there is a place for critical anthropomorphism, so looking through the lens of understanding our horse and from a scientific point of view and what their needs are and what they likely can experience in terms of emotions and feelings, and then applying that in different situations. So if they have a lack of food, for example, they are likely to be hungry, they are likely to be experiencing hunger. You know, if they have nowhere comfortable to lie down, they may be experiencing tiredness and fatigue. So I think it's really important that we think about what the experience is for the animal, because that's what's really important. And not all animals are the same either. So it allows us to assess the individual and what their preferences are, you know. So we all have individual likes and dislikes, or, you know, some horses prioritize some resources over others. So I'm sure we all know the horse that's a lot more motivated by food, for example, than others. So for those horses, you know, restrictive diets might have even more of a negative impact on their welfare than, you know, say your horse that's not so food motivated, for example. So it really allows us to assess the individual as well, and see if we're meeting their needs. So yeah, we can use it in a whole range of different situations.
Yeah, and I see, and you use the word anthropomorphism there, which is a big word. Now that just means attaching human emotions to animals. Am I correct in saying that?
Human emotions and characteristics that animals might not possess because they don't have the cognitive ability, for example, for maybe some of our more complex emotions, you know, and kind of planning what they're going to do with their lottery wins and things like that. So we need to be careful when we're assigning some things like that. But certainly in terms of critical anthropomorphism, they are sentient beings. They have the ability to feel both positive and negative states. So it's really important that we don't shy away from talking about that and thinking about that, because we want our horses to not just be healthy, but also be happy.
And using this 5 domains model is easy to keep on kind of track. You can kind of go through and like almost like a checklist, I guess?
Definitely. It allows us to do a kind of structured and systematic evaluation. So absolutely like a checklist. So we're not missing out bits or maybe prioritising bits. So I know I'm a little bit guilty because I'm a vet, first and foremost, is that I perhaps sometimes might tend to prioritise physical health, because that's where the majority of my training has been, you know, or, you know, think that it's more important that the horse has box rest, for example, you know, for a lameness condition, than I am necessarily always thinking about, okay, what's the going to be the psychological impact of that box rest from the horse and what can I do about that? So I hope I'm quite good at doing that mostly, but definitely got an intrinsic bias towards prioritising physical health. So it helps us to stop doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what happens if we don't consider the 5 domains when we're managing our horses?
Well, I think it's very easy to maybe prioritise our own needs or conveniences as well, and fail to meet the needs of our horses, which is going to be compromising their welfare. We really want to get to a state where it's not just about the absence of negative emotional states. So it's not just about the absence of suffering, which is what some of the historic frameworks like the 5 freedoms have been based on, is the absence of negative does not necessarily equal positive, which I think is really important, because we really want to maximise those opportunities for positive welfare and positive interactions with our horses. And that's really what the 4th domain is about those behavioural interactions. And when we break that down, really what we're looking for is about that animal having control over its environment, having choices, having challenges. So essentially, the scientists use the term agency, which can be quite a difficult concept to understand. But the way I like to describe this is when we're managing our horses, we control a lot of what happens to them. They don't necessarily have an awful lot of choice a lot of the time. No. And I kind of liken this to a lack of agency when we incarcerate people. We use it as a punishment, for example. Or I don't know how everyone else felt during COVID and the lockdown, but a lot of our choice and control about what we could do and the freedom of our movement was restricted. And a lot of people found that very stressful. The agency and choice and control is a really important component for welfare. So it's not just about providing everything your horse needs, it's also about providing them with some control and choice and a certain degree of challenge and exploration in their environment too, so they've got those opportunities for positive interaction.
So could you tell us a little bit more about what each of the domains are and why they are so important?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we start with nutrition, I think it's probably fairly obvious what this incorporates, but what we're looking at is are our horses receiving the right amount of food, the right type of food, and importantly, is it presented in the right way? So we know that horses spend a lot of time eating. You know, they may spend upwards of 16 hours a day in their kind of natural environments eating. They are designed to eat a variety of things. So we historically, I think they eat grass. And they do obviously eat grass, but they're used to eating a variety of different grasses. They'll also eat different plants, so herbs, and they do spend a degree of time browsing as well. So they might spend up to 10% of their time eating kind of shrubs and hedges and other things like that too. So diet is all about the nutritional component of our management. And also obviously not forgetting water too, that's a really important point of nutrition. So it's really about evaluating, are we giving them the right kind of diet in the right kind of quantities and in the right kind of format for what their species specific needs are. So that's nutrition. Environment is about physical environmental resources that are available to them. So can they be thermally comfortable? Do they have like shelter where they can get out of the sun or the rain and the wind if they need to? Do they have somewhere comfortable to lie down? Horses do need to spend a small proportion of the day lying down in order to achieve REM sleep. So do they have somewhere safe and comfortable that they can do that? With horses, do they have the space in their environment to perform self-directed exercise, so exercise without human involvement where they can make choices. Obviously in the wild they would spend lots of time moving and roaming over vast areas, so horses have an intrinsic need to move, and often we can see rebound behaviour associated with that. So if their needs for movement aren't being met, say they've been confined for long periods of time, sometimes when we first turn them out they're very fresh and they spend a lot more time charging around, and that's a rebound behaviour. So what that's actually telling is the horse wasn't having enough movement prior to that. So if we're seeing that a lot, maybe we need to have a look at how confined they are the rest of the time and whether there's anything we can do to improve that too. So, you know, is there the right amount of light? What's the air quality like? All those kind of things in the environment that might be having an impact on our horse, and how that's making them feel as well, obviously. So are they tired? Are they feeling refreshed because they've had a nice sleep? You know, do they feel like they've got enough space to the freedom to roam? So that's environment. Physical health is obviously about the absence of disease and injury and pain and suffering. So are they physically healthy? Do they feel fit? Are they able to fully engage with the environment? So obviously if you're feeling poorly, then it doesn't matter if you've got an amazing environment because you still might be feeling quite lousy anyway. So, you know, and in these kind of things, we also want to be looking at preventative healthcare too. So are we making sure that we are avoiding anything we can? So, you know, do they have their teeth checked regularly to make sure that they're not in any pain or discomfort from that? Are their vaccinations all up to date? Are they on an appropriate parasite control program? All of those kind of things are incorporated in there too. And then Our behavioural interactions domain is really functionally about how the horse interacts with and can use all of those things in its environment. So that's broken down into environmental interactions and human interactions, so what's a horse's relationship like with us, and then social interactions with non-human animals. So horses are highly social species, so do they have the opportunity to interact with and engage in a positive way with other horses? And obviously that's not necessarily always guaranteed. You know, if space is limited or resources are limited, we might start to see more kind of aggressive or agonistic interactions between horses, which needs looking into. So yeah, and then we're looking at those 4 domains, and then realistically what the mental impact is. So we take an overview of all of those, and then we have a look at what impact that's actually having on the horse, how the horse is feeling, and we pull it all together into the 5th mental domain, about what the overall lived experience is for the horse.
I see. So just to super quickly recap there, the 5 domains are nutrition, health, behaviour, environment, and then that contributes to the 5th one, which is their overall well-being and mental state. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Roxane.
No problem.
How lucky am I to get to have these amazing conversations? I have learned so much from Roxane, and I really hope you have too. If you go and have a look at the World Horse Welfare website, you'll find a really useful guide on how to assess your horse's behaviour using that 5 domains model. If you've enjoyed this episode, please let us know your thoughts in the comments section down below, and whilst you're there, go and hit that subscribe button. It really helps out the charity channel, and I would be very, very grateful. Take care, and thank you so much for joining me here today.